as we've been saying all along with women's lacrosse, that right now they can't afford to take their foot off the gas, and they certainly did not against UMBC. 20-8, the final score last night, and Ellie Macera, of course, star of the game with 4 goals, and you knew first of all, even though she's only a sophomore. It is senior night. It is the final regular season home game, although never know. We may get an NCAA tournament game. But the important thing here is that they did what they had to do. 10 wins in a row. And right now, any loss could end their season. But you take a look at what's coming up on the schedule, and the only potential loss could be against Yale, like we said, broken into the rankings. They finish their season next Saturday at Albany, which is another potential loss. But this could be as a result, and we've talked about the gauntlet from earlier this season, the 3 ranked teams they had to face all in a row. Everything could hinge on the last 2 games this year. Guys, go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, so I did the game last night, and I actually was really impressed with Ellie Macera. I think her game has improved throughout the year as a player. I mean, she really does everything, and she does it well. But her athleticism really showed off to me last night, what she was able to do. Some of the shots she got off, and some of the plays that she made defensively as well too. She's really coming into her own as a player, and I think the sky really is the limit for her. And it's not a knock on the other women on the team. I think she is just a sensational athlete, and I think really coming into her own. She get a shot anytime she wants. She's unselfish. She passes the ball. She plays a great defense. I don't think there's anything she can't do. It really is. But,
in other words, she got on the Tewaaraton list. So that goes to 25 top players in both women's and men's lacrosse. But of course, you advance to the finals and everything like that. It's a couple of stages in the Tewaaraton Award. But a Stony Brook player, in particular, Stony Brook's best player, is under consideration, which we were a little bit concerned with earlier in the season, whether or not anybody on the team would get that kind of recognition.
Yeah, but I just her play is just so outstanding. I think it's hard not to highlight her and see the type of player that she is, and I think really what she's building herself to become in the future. The one player that I actually was impressed with last night, aside from Macera, of course, was Kayla Zapolsky. She took a number of draws. She played all over the field. And I thought she was pretty dynamic last night as well, too. I mean, both defensively, offensively. I mean, she's the returning defensive player of the year for the America East, but she can really play as well. And I think if she can continue to be productive at the draw control, I think that's going to go. Weaknesses is that they don't have a dominant player at the draw control. And if she can go better than 500, she can go 60% at the draw control and go a long way for Stony Brook.
Okay, guys, what say you?
Yeah, Stony Brook are playing strong, as you said. Really, everyone's stepping up. Both games on Tuesday where they won 18-3 against Binghamton, obviously yesterday as well. And yeah, for Stony Brook, in terms of just their dominance, as you said, the draw control, it's really, I think heavily their success, again, comes from Ellie Macera. Her ability to get to the ball when it's tipped up in the air, battle through other defenders, scoop up the ground ball. And she's not scoring, she's passing, kickstarting the attack, and getting her teammates involved, like Rafferty, Pulis, Sapolsky, as you said. And it's been a big reason for their success. And Macera and Hart, we're both on the Tewaaraton watch list. Now, just Macera in the top 25, but, those two are really dynamic on the attack. And just with how good they looked so far, it's tough for me to see them losing these final 2 games of the regular season, even with a ranked Yale team. But I think the bigger picture, just talking about that, is they're in pretty good position, I think, to maybe gain a spot or two. Because when you look at the rest of the league and top of the rankings, Number 5 Duke lost to the top ranked UNC, but they lost 18-4, and that's not a small margin. That's a pretty considerable amount for a top 5 team to be losing to another one. Meanwhile, number 8 Maryland upset number 2 Northwestern. So for Stony Brook, you could potentially see them move back up a spot or even back into the top 5.
That's most important because we thought there was going to be no chance that all they could do is not go down.
It'll be interesting to see what the committee, reacts, how they react to those ACC losses. Because the ACC conference is so much more difficult than the America East Conference, right? So are they going to be punished for being in a more difficult conference?
Well,
but Ken, I do think you bring up a good point with it. It's an 18-4 loss. It's not just a loss. It's a drubbing, right?
Yeah, and you have to wonder how far Duke is going to go down. And if somebody above Stony Brook goes down, Stony Brook could invariably move up. And, yeah, that's where the opportunity comes. Because actually last week they did move down one, despite the fact that they didn't just do anything to deserve it.
Yeah, it was back to upsets and other teams getting upset and falling down. And here we're kind of seeing the inverse where it's 2 teams above them that are potentially going down as opposed to the team below them getting the upset and moving on up. And just looking at the RPI rankings, Duke's ranked 12th right now. And there's a disconnect there because, again, they were ranked as the top 5 team. I don't see that happening when tomorrow's polls come out. They could potentially still be a top 10 team. But, for me, I'd be stunned if Seawolves don't gain at least one spot. Although it's all pretty much a moot point because UNC's been dominant. Still undefeated, 15-0. I don't see them losing a game ever this season.
Didn't Syracuse lose as well?
That last week, I believe, yeah.
That was last week, okay. Yeah, because now Northwestern, I believe they lost 2, didn't they? They dropped 1.
Yeah, they lost to Maryland, 15-9.
Yeah, that happened yesterday as well. Yeah. So they're all going to go down.
Yeah, I was going to say, Maryland, I think, is going to be the big mover. I think they'll get Duke's 5th seed, but I see Stony Brook, I think, moving up 1 from 7 to 6.
Depending on which poll you're following, because I'm looking at the Inside Lacrosse IWLCA Division I poll. They're at 6 this week. They were at 5. They went down.
Yeah, but they might go back to 5.
Yeah, they could go back up to 5 very easily with all these losses. Northwestern going down. They were as high. They went from 3 to 2. And as we were saying all along, that the only 2 teams that beat Stony Brook this year were Northwestern and Syracuse, and they're ranked above them. And both took bad losses. So, again, golden opportunity for Stony Brook. And as you said, Maryland's going to move up too. And they're, of course, always a threat to win it all. But, so, there could be a little bit of musical chairs going on. North Carolina, undefeated, they're not moving. Okay? And the other thing about it is that with rare exceptions, as in multiple undefeated teams, if you are, a top of the mountain, somebody's going to knock you off. So I think North Carolina is pretty safe.
Yeah, I would definitely say that North Carolina is safe. I think Syracuse is the one that could potentially drop. They've already got 3 losses and they're ranked number 2.
They have 4.
Yeah, right. So I think that there's movement with them as well too. Definitely the Northwestern loss is potential movement as well. But looking forward, I don't know. I'm looking at the schedule looking forward, and I'm doing a little, score watching myself here for. I think Albany's a trap. To be honest with you,
Albany always is a trap because Albany always brings out their A game, and even though that's usually not enough to overcome Stony Brook, Albany will scare them. They'll scare them for the first half, and then Stony Brook will wake up and stomp on them again. But that win, okay, if they do win, it will be like what we said about a lot of these other wins in the America East. They can't be close, because if they're close, the pollsters will find a way to knock Stony Brook down. The selection committee will find a way to knock Stony Brook down. And, Stony Brook, because of that America East schedule, and it's almost at the point where, well, first of all, if you lose a game in the America East, you're dead, okay? If they lose to Albany, for example, by some miracle, because I think they are a far superior team to anybody else in the America East, if they lose to Albany, they may not get in that large bid. If
I think
they
you're probably
just
right about
beat
that.
Albany, that might hurt them too.
Yeah, no, it's definitely got to be, I think, more of what we're seeing now. And, for Stony Brook, really, we're looking at least what I'm looking at is, could they get a top 8 seed? And for me, they have to rely on other teams getting upset along with them winning,
It's
like we
been
saw
working
this
out for them
weekend.
so far.
Yeah, for now, it's been working out for sure. And, that win against Vermont was huge because I think they play better than Albany right now. This season, they're 12-3. And they got a good shot, I think, at winning this conference, as much as Albany does and has been for almost the past decade. But they definitely got to blow them out the water. And as you said, they can't afford any losses against an Albany team and a Yale team to where they're both decent, and even Yale now starting to receive votes. They're still at the bottom.
They're not
half.
receiving votes. They're ranked 25th. They're in.
Yeah, they're in now. But we've seen Stony Brook play against teams at the bottom half of the rankings. And
what's even more important,
the difference between the skill level there from the top and bottom. It's one of those again where it really shouldn't be close.
Arizona State is in too.
Yeah.
So just about every non-conference team they faced is either currently ranked or has been ranked.
Yeah, no, again, that's big too, again, just for their seeding, because it has legitimacy to that schedule. Where usually pollsters would say, oh, we faced Hartford, we faced UMass Lowell. Now we obviously didn't face Hartford, but they faced UNH. Now you can't really argue that just because, hey, every other team they play is a top 25 or just about.
I was actually thinking about it today a little bit when I was kind of rolling through some of the thoughts for today's show, and I was thinking to myself, their watch party is truly going to be a watch party this year. Right. The women, like they're like we're saying right now, like, listen, they something could occur, something could change it up, something could, and it could. There's no guarantee for them even if they win both games. You never know. I mean, they should, I would say, but you can't. There's no guarantee. It's not like they win the America East.
There are no rules when it comes to this. So you now, in theory, you could very easily say, how can they say no to the number 5 or 6 team in the conference? And the answer is you didn't play for your automatic qualifier. They'll come up with an excuse. But at least in theory, if you are ranked in the top 10 or even better yet in the top 5, and you end your season as far as you can go, as far as you're allowed to go, and you have not been beaten, you have not been knocked out, you weren't knocked out of the tournament in the semis or the finals, what black mark do you have against you? Okay?
Right. And again, this team's been on a roll, all this season. They're going to finish their every season, at least never losing at home. They're 12-2 right now, 857 win percentage, undefeated in the conference, and when they likely beat Albany, I forget what the record is right now, but I think that's going to be their 60th straight win in conference play.
And so that'll be the last.
I was going to say, so they'll wrap it up with that, historic precedent that where they lead country in. So, there's still a lot to play for on that end. And I think that's why I don't see them losing these final 2 games. It's just because there's so much so much here at stake compared to, the other programs that we're going to get into that, as you said, they can't really afford to lose a game, because you're going to see a dramatic drop, and as you said, it could be their season. And just teams coached under Joe Spallino, they don't do that.
Well, in this case, it won't be his fault because, like, in a normal set of circumstances, if they were going to the tournament, first of all, they would qualify easily. I think they're already in, but all they have to do is win the tournament, and these last 2 games would be basically meaningless.
Right.
But because of the fact they have no tournament, these games have more meaning than ever. Like I said, it could be the toughest part of their schedule.
With the roster construction, it really does feel like a team that's all in this year. There's a goaltending we just had senior day, and look how many of those players are prominent role players right now. Sarah Pulis, as we said, Sean Rafferty, Jesse Arline, Haley Dillon on defense, both goaltenders, and Campbell and Halsell. There's the majority of the lineup right now isn't coming back next year.
Right.
So this is one where it really, and I felt that move getting Campbell, I thought was a really big sign. But it really is a move where, as much as they are building for the future with Massera and Hart as underclass women, there's still a lot of folks there where, Coach Williams is essentially saying, "Hey, we're going all in, and we're really, really pushing for that title shot and the opportunity to face probably UNC for the championship."
The other variables, I think, that, and it has to do with conference play. Question number one, do they get punished for not being in a conference tournament? But question number two is, conference play is going to shake up the tournament because you're going to have somebody that's going to lose, in the Big Ten or in the ACC and that's going to change the rankings, and who gets in and who doesn't get it,
Yeah, I just think as they've been so dominant already, and it says if they really beating Albany, I think it won't leave that many questions. Where you look at this team, they've gone 60-0 or whatever it is. They sweep the entire conference again. To me, I don't think they get punished for not competing in the conference tournament when they have the best overall record against conference teams the last 6-7 years in any sport.
Yeah, but do they get punished if the wrong teams lose? Do you know what I'm saying? It's not that they've done something wrong, but what if UNC loses? What if Maryland loses? What if
sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
if the wrong team
I think in
wins
cases like that, their seeding would go down ultimately, but at the same time, I think they're still going to be in. I just don't see how that team doesn't make it into the NCAA tournament. Especially if, as you said, they finish out undefeated and a team above them manages to lose in their conference tournament final.
I think the tough one here, and this is just my example for it. So the Rutgers is ranked 11 at the poll I'm looking at right now, the NCAA poll I'm looking at right now. If they're in the Big Ten, if they win the Big Ten tournament, and you got to choose between Northwestern, Maryland, and Stony Brook could be on the outs.
I think with as many teams are going to be competing in the tournament, there still should be room. For me that'd be one of those teams at the bottom. As you said, those teams they'll probably bump Stony Brook down, but I don't see Stony Brook finishing lower than like a 15 or something like that.
So not down enough.
Yeah, exactly. Unless there's just complete pandemonium, just a bunch of upsets. I don't see how Stony Brook get punished that bad.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of knocking on wood that I've been doing. Maybe you guys haven't heard it. But...
So don't worry. Stony Brook has been due, especially Coach Polina.
Yes, knocking on a little bit of wood here. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's kind of what they need at this point, along with just continuing their dominant play.
So when we move over to the men's game yesterday, Matt, it was a really kind of like an interesting game, kind of like a back and forth, right? Where they're down, they're up, and then they might be losing a game. It was kind of like a crazy atmosphere for them.
Well, the crazy thing, too, is that they carried a nice lead into the fourth quarter and extended it, but 4 unanswered goals toward the end. So that gives you a little bit of concern, and I'm just looking at the score, 13-11 the final, and UMBC, I actually expected more out of them this year. They're only 2-3 in the America East, 4-6, and you have to wonder about Ryan Moran. UMBC is not necessarily among the most impulsive athletic programs you'll see, so I don't think he's in any danger. And also with Stony Brook out next year, golden opportunity. But the America East is rather weak. I mean,
they're the worst conference. That's going back to last week. The worst conference for men's lacrosse.
The worst conference for men's lacrosse.
God bless Brian. I don't see how they're going to carry the America East next season. If we're losing Stony Brook, how dominant they've been.
All they need is 6 teams to maintain the automatic qualifier. And, it does go back a few years because when Stony Brook, Binghamton, and Albany joined the America East back in 2002, or 2001-02, but the 2002 lacrosse season, when Hofstra, Drexel, and they left, when the 3 teams went to the CAA, the the current new CAA teams were complaining that the America East was a vastly inferior conference without them, and they maintained the automatic qualifier, and Hofstra couldn't get into the NCAA despite being a better team than anybody in the Rump America East. Stony Brook won that first year. They beat Albany on one of the New York Giants football team's practice fields. And, of course, rest is history. But the point there is that the America East loses something definitely with Stony Brook. But they were expecting something with Vermont rising to prominence and Hartford. And look what happened to Hartford. We know that story. But a couple of years ago, Vermont and Hartford knocked off Albany and Stony Brook in the semifinals and face each other in the final. So they were expecting a little bit more diversity among the champions, but we already went through that last week. And we went through that with baseball. We go through it with lacrosse. Albany, UMBC, or Stony Brook. And lately, Vermont's been breaking in, but it's traditionally gone to those powers. Now, as far as yesterday is concerned, the Seawolves ended the third quarter with a pair of unanswered goals and then came up with 3 more unanswered goals to start the fourth. And then UMBC, that put the lead at 13-7, and UMBC made 13-11 with 4 unanswered, the last one coming with 8 seconds left. So they made the Seawolves sweat a little.
Yeah, they certainly did. That was a close one. And, as you said, to me, it kind of shouldn't have been. Although, just with how roller coaster the game was, it's incredible, honestly, just the events that unfolded. It was really a game of runs. And that's, Greg, as you know well, that's a coach is saying in lacrosse. It's just how to describe it. Because Stony Brook trailed 6-1 for a while, then went on a 12-1 scoring run. And then, as you said, it gave up those unanswered goals over the last half of action. But for Stony Brook, they did just enough, and the offense, once again, really stepped up and was able to make an impact and go on enough of a run, as well as hold the UMBC attack for a good portion of that middle part of the game, Greg.
Yeah, and the guy who got it going yesterday, obviously, was Kevin Mack with the 9 points, 6 goals and 3 assists. I mean, he is fun to watch. He is really shifty behind the goal. He's got excellent vision, and obviously given his opportunity to get his hands free, he can definitely shoot the ball. So I thought that obviously, he kind of had went off yesterday.
He scored man down and man up.
Yeah. The one thing that I thought was pretty interesting for Stony Brook as well too is they continue to put their freshman goalie in. Jameson played very well again yesterday. 14 saves, 11 goals. And I think that's a really, to me, I'm really fascinated by that because I thought Palmer was playing very well. So when you take him out and you put Jameson McLaughlin in, and he performs even better. It's almost, we've talked about the women having the embarrassment of riches in the goal, but maybe the men have it as well too, between the two goalies.
Yeah, and I think the difference, just is the experience there, where Palma is an upperclassman with McLaughlin. This is his first season. This is his second collegiate game he had in net at the start, and he performed just as well as he did in his first one. So you kind of buy into what Coach Gallardi was saying, that he feels like he won the starting spot. Although for Palma, I'd be shocked if he's not starting in it next week for senior day, because he's a senior. So to me, I feel like the move is to get McLaughlin that experience, get him ready for next year's CAA play, and determine what happens from there. Whether Palma returns for a redshirt or for a graduate season, or whether they got to go out and get another goalie, but you have your number one in McLaughlin. So I think that's what him getting these starting opportunities is for right now. And the big thing for the Seawolves is that he's delivered, because for both squads, it's been a long time since they've had 2 pretty good goaltenders as opposed to just one that they rely heavily on.
I think he has to start. I think Jameson McLaughlin has to start. I cannot see you kind of pull your senior goalie and then get your freshman playing. I think the freshman has to play. I mean, he's playing well. They're winning.
I would say the just how sentimental senior day is for a lot of these guys, and we're gonna presume Palma for the moment Palma's graduating. Don't know for sure yet. He's a senior, so certainly a possibility. In that sense, I think he should be the starter if he's not coming back next season. But if he gives up a run, gives up 4 goals, maybe you pull him and get McLaughlin back out there, because unlike the women, next week there is virtually going to be the Seawolves' last game of the season and last American East game as well against Vermont. So it's a game obviously you want to win, but unlike the women, the Seals aren't really playing for anything other than pride and is getting a senior day win from their home crowd.
Well, they could be regular season America East champs if they win.
Yeah, that's.
Which I mean is something.
I
right?
guess. I guess.
And 10 wins.
You know what?
10 wins.
Now
10
that
wins
we
is hard.
saw, guys, now that we saw what they did for the baseball team, and they did it also for softball. They just got rid of any America East logo. It just says conference champions. And I think they're kind of preparing for next year with the CAA because,
Right.
the conference championships, no matter what conference you're in, are still conference championships. So that's something that they're kind of, setting both teams up for. And they can also set up the lacrosse teams for as well. That the regular season championship is still something to play for. And
Yeah, but Matt, you know what that baseball thing was all about.
Of
That's
course.
that's not where the regular season championships are located. That was the conference championship section.
That was the tournament
middle
champion.
finger.
Yes. But they did do something similar. I saw it at the softball field as well. But, no controversy there necessarily. But the future is that, you're not going to put America East championships here and CAA championships there and Skyline Conference championships. Well, actually, they did with men's basketball, but that goes back to Division III. But the whole thing here is that, it's something, okay? It's something to finish first, despite the fact that of course, we know what happened with the conference tournament. But the fact is, if Stony Brook beats Vermont on Saturday, Stony Brook will win the regular season championship.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I wish I won my last game in college. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's definitely a lot, writing in that sense, but still, it is, more so, I think, just for the players there. It's for the seniors. It's going to be their last day. So if I was a senior, I'd be like, I kind of hoping what we saw in the women's game, where you get a lot of time out there. You get that action. You get to play in front of your family and your fans. At least one last time. If I was Palma, I definitely want to get on the field. And if I'm him, I'm not on the field at any point in those 60 minutes. I'm pretty tight. Especially playing and starting for a lot of the season.
Yeah, and I think I will agree with you, Ken, in this regard that I think he's played well, but athletics is about winning. And he's, I think Coach Gallardi's got to put who he thinks is the best goalie. Personally, I was shocked at the move that Palma got sat down. I was really surprised at that move, but Coach Gallardi sees him every day, so he's making a call there. And McLaughlin has produced, right? So you can't really argue that, So I think that's like I think he's going to start. I really do. I think the kid Jamison is going to start.
If he does, it's definitely going to be his biggest test because you go from a team like UMBC, where they're towards the middle of the pack in terms of where they stand nationally. You definitely, I think, below Stony Brook to a Vermont team to where they're not ranked or receiving votes, but they're on that outside bubble where they're likely going to win the conference championship and play in the NCAA tournament. So it's definitely going to be a big test for him. And I think the rest of the Seals, too, for winning that regular season title, to where they're really going to have to step it up defensively. And, that game against Vermont, it's not one. You give up a run, you better hope you win on a 12-run scoring run of your own, before Vermont climbs back. Because those games, past few seasons, have definitely been huge. The scoring's been on the low side more often than not.
Yeah, but I will say that I agree with what you're going with as well, though, too. Like Vermont is potentially could rack up some points next week, but Stony Brook should be able to rack up some points. I mean, with Armitage, Mack, and Polinetti at the attack group, you force the other team to have three different types of players, defensive players, to cover them. That three-headed monster, I think, is really difficult to cover. So there's no reason why they shouldn't be doing some scoring, this weekend coming up as well, too. So I think it's going to be a great game, though. I really do. I think the Vermont-Stony Brook game for men's lacrosse is going to be a great game this weekend.
It's going to be exciting one to tune into on WUSB 107.3 FM.
Yeah, I think for sure. That's going to be a great one.
Yeah, so
It's been an exciting year all around in every sport, every time Stony Brook and Vermont meet up, right? Like, it's just been I guess the stars have aligned. It's just Vermont every sport has been very.
I would say I think it helps.
Very,
it helps. They've been competitive, I think, in a lot of sports. Obviously, basketball. They're men. The men's this season they were the two best during the regular season for a long time. On the women's side, Vermont and Stony Brook faced off several times in the conference tournament.
Right, and even men's soccer,
men's soccer as well.
Men's soccer team opened up conference play against them, and Vermont just missed national ranking. They had the most votes for a team that missed national ranking, and Stony Brook beat them 2-0. I would say there's almost like a school rivalry brewing if we weren't, up and leaving.
Right, I was going to say it's definitely different, I think, from the Albany Stony Brook and even GIT Stony Brook, to where it really comes down, I think, to me, there's not necessarily bad blood as there is, I think, just that chip on their shoulder mentality for both teams, where it's like, if this is a game you take seriously in the sense that if I beat this team, I know I'm going to do pretty good, in the postseason. And this is in every sport, volleyball, women's soccer, etc.
Yeah, I know, absolutely.
Yeah, Ken, I think that's a really good point. I think it's, and Mike, you were saying it's like a, not a rival, it's a healthy respect for each other.
Exactly. Yeah, I wanted a
healthy respect.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good way of putting it.
Right. It's it's I guess if you had to it's like a Brady Manning type thing, where maybe the teams aren't rivals, but you're gonna get you're gonna get the best effort from both teams, right? So it always makes for entertaining television. So it's kind of the same thing. It's been like that this year between Stony Brook and Vermont, but
past few seasons for sure. Yeah.
Right. Regardless, why don't we talk about a sport that Vermont doesn't have anymore?
Baseball.
Let's be gentlemen about this. Let's say the ladies go first, because they did have the better weekend.
Yeah, because of course they did sweep Hartford, and today Dawn Bodrug got back in the pitcher's circle for the second day in a row. Not quite as sharp as she was yesterday when she threw a no-hitter in 5 innings.
Yeah, she had a down performance in which she struck out 13 and walked 1 in 7
But she gave up a couple of hits.
Yeah, right. So she should just retire, honestly.
I don't wonder how bad that fatigue's hitting her, huh? Only 13 strikeouts?
I know. Well, luckily for her, she was pretty well rested. She only threw 78 pitches the day before. Have you guys...
I didn't realize that. Wow.
Have you guys seen like a more collective team beatdown from the softball team this year than we did on Friday?
I was going to say...
I know, because we do have a ranked women's...
when you compare it to any team, besides women's lacrosse, I haven't seen, one team dominate another like that Saturday game, or that game 1, 11-0, where they were just firing on all cylinders, the Seawolves were. And Bodrug, it was incredible. I'm shocked they got hits off her today, honestly, just how strong she was performing yesterday. And that really this no-hitter, I thought, statistically was her worst one, I think, of all of them this season.
Right. Well, that's what happens when your team scores too many runs and only lets you go 5 innings, right?
Yeah.
But it's a good problem to have. I mean, you're going to be upset, right?
Yeah.
It's not your fault it didn't go 7.
No, you could only strike out the batters you face.
Right. But here's another interesting thing from the hitting. From the hitting today. I mean, of course, Dawn struck out 13 Hartford Hawks. Not one Stony Brook Seawolves struck out.
Oh, they are so... And you know what, man? I'm glad you mentioned that. I've said this before. I'm the baseball beat reporter, but I started last year with softball. And our regular reporter, Jeremy Portnoy, whenever he can't cover a game, I get the softball team. So this past week, he was pretty busy. So I got double duty, both baseball and softball. I got to speak to Megan Bryant a couple of times now this year, and she said every time I've spoken to her that, they pride themselves as being really good 2-strike hitters. And, well, how do you avoid striking out? Hitting well with 2 strikes. And yeah, Matt, as you touched on, what? Not a single strikeout, right?
0,
right? Doesn't get much better than that. Me and Greg had said last week that it's not that this team is better on paper, but this team has performed way better. There's just something about the way that they synergize, the way that they work together. They are collectively a better team. And look at how everyone is coming along. Ashley Jacobson, I don't think we had any expectations for her coming into this year, let alone knew who she was. What a series she had. What a week she had, because she had a good couple of games against Manhattan too, my recollection. She's having she's hitting 324 now. So, I mean, you lose Melissa Rarick, right? Your regular first baseman.
Pitcher, yeah.
Well, it's not that I'm not saying that Ashley Jacobson is the second coming of Melissa Rarick, but can you ask for much better? Right. And then, I mean, you got Kira McFarland. She's taken that next step in her second year. Alicia Orozco, she's been outstanding. Alyssa Costello, what more can you say about her? Corin Badger, we all know what she can do.
Slugging.
Yeah, right. And she was an inch away from hitting a go-ahead grand slam in game 1 on Thursday against Manhattan. Maybe if the wind was blowing just an extra mile per hour, she would have connected on Badger bomb number 15. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is this team, don't look at the names, just look at the job they're doing together. They're all playing small ball. Mm-hmm. They're all getting the big hit when they need to. They're hitting the ball hard. They're putting it in play. They're making the plays defensively, something that they struggled with at times last year. They made some big errors last year, but Kira McFarland, she's playing shortstop this year. She's playing a hell of a shortstop. Both first basemen, Lindsay Osmer and Ashley Jacobson, they've done a great job. Corin Badger's a good catcher. That's been her reputation from the time she got here. Alicia Orozco, Alyssa Costello, Shauna Nuss, these are good outfielders. And I mean, another one too, Catherine Ann Kopinski. She's been so productive.
In the bottom of the lineup. Yeah, every game I've called with her, she's gotten big hits. Yeah,
man, that's really why they are so good. Is it's not about having Rarick and Herring and Noah. Yeah. It's not about having those big names. It's about being solid 1 through 9.
Yeah, that's I think
they are solid
from prior teams to this year. Where last year if you're reviewing a game, it's likely going to be Seawolves won because Robert pitched excellent in the circle and scored or drove home 4 runs, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe Nowakowski or
Herring and Nowakowski and Rarick.
But now, as you said, it's really, I think they share the wealth pretty well. And,
right.
Do they have that power? Sure. Badger is a lot of that, in terms of the home run ability, but. As you said, is the rest of the team's also doing their part. Take the other game we haven't spoken about yet for softball. They won 1-0 yesterday, and you said it was off small ball. Jacobson scored, and Brooke Dye singled to left field, and was able to advance to third off an error. It's just they play the game so well all around that they've managed to find a lot of success. Even when they lose pretty close.
Exactly, and I wanted to talk about. I wanted to mention Brooke Dye because, you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? And I don't mean to call her a weak link, but I'm just using I'm turning a phrase here, right? So
we talk about baseball.
When the whole rest of the lineup is being shut down, and think about how good some of their hitters are, right? Sophia Chambers, Lindsay Osmer, Kopinski, Alicia, Kira McFarland, obviously Corin Badger, the list goes on. When none of them are doing anything, somebody else has to step it up. It hasn't been a good year for Brooke Dye, but hey, she had the big hit, right?
Great point. She's hitting 183 right now, which is the worst among eligible batters.
Right.
Like I said, she was the one that came up with the big single and was able to advance as well off the arrow and was able to drive in Nuss, who was performing a little bit better, but not too much better.
No, right, and exactly. It was Gary Cohen always calls it a bolt from the blue whenever a struggling player does something for the Mets, and I mean, it was all these star players, all these girls having great years, and it was the 2 struggling ones that won them the game. And that's what a great team does, that they're not top heavy. That's exactly the way to put it, is they're not top heavy. Right. That, and of course, they pitch outstandingly well. It turns out past Dawn Bodrug, they've got a couple of other good arms too. Ashton Malace, she's talented, a JUCO transfer, but Shelby Denman, she is really, really underrated. She's having a good year. Obviously, as you just said, in that 1-0 victory, she pitched a complete game shutout. She stranded the bases loaded in the 6th, stranded the tying run in the 7th, got through it, 7-inning complete game.
Yeah, that's big, I think, too, because just talking about Denman, her at the start of the season, that was good. Towards the middle, that March, she wasn't really performing as well. She was giving up 3 earned runs, 6 earned runs, 3 earned runs, 2 earned runs. But now you look at her April, and she's really starting to find her groove again. Besides, not only surviving, essentially pitching a complete game almost every time she steps out there, but as you said, keeping the runs down, getting those strikeouts up. Obviously, she had 12 against Providence a couple weeks ago. Against Hartford, she had 7. But she's really, I think, finding herself, utilizing a great fast pitch ability, and really getting batters off guard, when they're expecting something slow. And I think that happened a lot in the Hartford game, where even though she gave up 7 hits, they weren't getting a 2-4 pass. First off, they didn't score, but number 2, they weren't getting past second base too often in that game.
No, she does very well with runners on base. She is no Dawn Bodrug, right? She's not overpowering. She doesn't have to be overpowering. She's crafty. Yeah. She induces soft contact, and she gets outs. Opponents are only hitting 237 off of her. Yep. She is a very effective number 2. Yep.
That's the thing too, because for her career so far, she's been overshadowed first by Roberts last season, and obviously with Bodrug this season. But she's a senior, likely gonna return next year. So Bodrug graduating, Denman is likely going to be the number 1 starter, at least as the time being, for the Seawolves team. So this growth is definitely big, and it's going to be a big push, I think, for Stony Brook to make some noise in the CAA next season.
Right. Well, they don't know that about Shelby. I mean, they want her to come back. I don't know if the feeling is mutual. We would love to have her back. We like Shelby.
Oh, that team definitely would. Yeah, but, obviously, because definitely using an ace with Balder graduating. But.
Yeah. But I don't know. I haven't necessarily. I've heard that it's right now one-sided. I think she's thinking about it. But I don't think the decision's been made. So obviously,
gotta wait and see on that. But even so, you said with Milas and her improving throughout the season, it's definitely been big. She played against Manhattan, was in the loss there, but
well, she bounced back. Bad first inning and very good final 6 innings. So sometimes it's not about
really been her weakness so far. Because in that main game too, she really struggled, gave up a couple runs, a few hits, walks. She just got pulled after the second inning, And she was like that too against Fairfield and Holy Cross, where she really struggles, early in the game, but really settles down. And like we saw against Sacred Heart, able to shut them out.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm taking a look at the standings here for the softball team, and they, of course, have an identical record to UMass Lowell, who they face at the end of the regular season.
Right.
But just ahead of them, they're at 6-3.
Yeah,
Albany's at 9-4, and UMBC's 8-3. So they're definitely within striking distance. And what's even better, that they face these teams coming up.
Right. Yeah. Keep in mind they're only 5 games into a 12-game homestand, and right up next is next Wednesday. They're going to play host to Courtney Coppersmith and UMBC. It's just going to be one game. I think it's a rain-out makeup.
I believe it is, yeah. So that's how they had to sneak it in because they play Hofstra the next day, which I believe is the regularly scheduled midweek game.
Yes, and just keep this in mind. This is why Stony Brook trails UMBC. The name Courtney Coppersmith, you may recognize it. Her whip is higher than her ERA. 0.45 ERA, 0.63 whip. But also she's a two-way, and she's hitting 366 and slugging 559. Now, granted, you might be a little confused as to how UMBC has lost 7 games with Courtney Coppersmith, pitching to a 0.45 ERA. Well, guess what? She hasn't pitched most of their innings this year. You know who has? Kia Matter, who has a 0.95 ERA.
Yep.
She's also outstanding. So I don't even know which one Stony Brook is going to face, but it's going to be Dawn Bodrug versus some outstanding pitcher. Right. It's going to be a very low-scoring game.
And Steele's already playing with a chip on their shoulder, losing that doubleheader a couple Wednesdays ago to UMBC And just the history there, these two teams battling each other the past couple seasons for the title. And you want to talk about a name that gets under players' skin. It's Courtney Coppersmith. Just with that success she brings, the Seawolves bring it, and they definitely got to bring it even more in order to beat her, just because of how dominant she has been. More so than Dawn Bodrug in her career, which is incredible. How successful Bodrug has been this season.
Right. Talk about. Yeah. I'm just looking at UMBC's schedule. Some fluky losses. Well, first of all, early in the season, they lose to Seton Hall and St. Joseph's, and two to Seton Hall, actually. Okay? We already know that Seton Hall is in the Big East. Georgetown, another Big East team. But they lose 3-2 to Albany. Okay? They lose 1-0 at Hartford. They lose 8-3 to Maine. They took 2 out of 3 in that series. Maine is 6-32.
Yeah. Right. Well, again, the broken clock method, right? They're right twice a day.
Yeah.
Blind squirrel finding.
But that baseball and softball, big statistical sample, you just can't win them all.
Exactly. Right. Too many games. I mean, that's just how it works, right? But Stony Brook softball, like most great baseball and softball teams, they're averaging, a 2 out of 3 series, right? They've won 2/3 of their games this year, 26-13, 6-3 in conference play.
Yeah, and that UMBC game is one you definitely want to tune in WSB to listen to, just because, we don't talk about teams going all in. Like we've seen Stony Brook wins Lacrosse. Chris Kuhlmeyer, I think, is really, he recognizes this is the year to get a push and try to go far in the NCAA tournament. Almost made it to the second round last year. But there are 9 fifth years, redshirt seniors, and seniors on the squad, including Coppersmith. So, there's a lot of players for the Retrievers right now on the field now who may not be there next season. So, he definitely recognizes that, hey, especially with Stony Brook gone now, that's a big, I think, weight off your shoulder, because how competitive these two teams have been over the past couple seasons in the playoffs. This is one to where UMBC getting that second almost ace like we saw in UMBC now, compared to last year where it was really just Coppersmith in the circle doing damage. It's definitely big in terms of their success in the postseason and even afterwards.
Now, when you guys, Mike, you had brought up the idea of Coach Bryant talking about being, 2-strike hitter. I think one of the things that kind of goes missing sometimes with the coaching, and I think this is why Coach Bryant is doing such a good job this year, is when you have excellent players, they can just kind of handle it for you. Mm-hmm. And we've all said, that we feel like this has been like that there's something about this team that makes them special. And one of the things that makes them special is what you guys are talking about is how they kind of cover for each other and they pick up the slack and all that stuff. Yeah. But I really want to say, Coach Bryant, it's not about what you talk about, it's what you emphasize. Mm-hmm. And it seems like this year she's emphasizing the right things. Not that she's done the wrong things in the past. That's not the point I'm making, but it's fitting and it's working right now for them. Yeah, and I think that's why they're able to get some of those things. And sometimes when you have a dominant player like they did last year, you kind of get away from some of the stuff that you really should be emphasizing. And then you come into the next season, you're kind of like, I think we would have, as a coach, a review, and you say to yourself, what could we have done differently? And some of these things you emphasize are some of the things you would do differently. Right. So when you got 2 strikes against you at UMBC, you're not worried about striking out. You're thinking about getting a hit. Absolutely. What a different mindset that is.
Mm-hmm. Right. And they've definitely got a lot of girls getting hits for them. So, but speaking of hits, why don't we talk about the baseball team now? Because it wasn't too bad a weekend for them either.
No. And on a, just on a quick note for the baseball, I know I got a little inside tip yesterday that it seems like all has been going well with DeGennaro, and the way it was put to me is that it's just a matter of time right now. It's just a waiting game. So everything with the surgery went well, from what I understand. So I think that's good news. Yeah, that's good news, I think, for the baseball team for next year.
Also for him personally, too. His baseball career can resume.
Yeah. Well, the surgery was first week of March, right? It was the first week of March.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
Yes,
but definitely, I think just with this rehab process,
yeah.
So far, all started. I think
we're not.
Oh,
look,
is he in a throwing program now?
No. I don't have any information like that. I'm just saying,
they probably shutting him down.
Well.
Yeah. Okay. No.
Everything
yes.
went well. That's the point
But-
I was trying to make there.
Okay. Good. No, that's good. Yeah, because the
Yeah.
surgery was the day after their LIU game at home, so it was a while ago now.
Right.
But so far through this process, I think everything going well is key for them. And obviously,
Yes.
especially just I
And
think
for
with
him,
the-
like Matt said.
For
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
But definitely just looking at Stony Brook and their pitching because goodness gracious, is he missed there?
Right, but you know what though? You know what? The starting pitching was good this weekend. There was, I mean, look,
Not enough of it.
no. Well, look, Ken, don't totally crap on the starting pitching. The bullpen was not good. I mean, they allowed 20 runs overall in 3 games, so that's not good. But the
It's
starting
almost
pitching,
as bad as Wednesday.
right? Well, Wednesday when you allow 2 touchdowns and a field goal, you're not going to win too many baseball.
And walk 15 hitters.
Right, but there was.
We're gonna get back to that one.
I called that game.
We'll get back to that.
Oh my God, I called that game.
I mean,
Okay, and
I
it's
heard
not
you.
over.
yes, and it was. Let me put it this way: you would,
Slow.
if it were a major league game and you saw that, you'd be demanding a refund.
Yeah.
But look, we knew what it was from the beginning. I mean,
No.
you saw the starting
Not this
lineups.
bad.
Matt Sank rolled out the freshman there, and he just ran people out there that did not get a lot of action.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the pitchers, and the one thing I always do when I'm calling the game is I basically ignore the cumulative statistics because they're inflated because of the non-conference schedule.
Right.
Conference stats is one thing, but I also go by their most recent outings. So one of the things that I saw was he was rolling guys out there is that in many cases they had not pitched since the last time Stony Brook faced Manhattan 3 weeks ago.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
these guys had not gotten a lot of action, but
Right.
15 walks cumulative. I mean, it was
I can
bad.
understand that, but I mean, even with not getting that much action, I mean, 17 runs in 9 innings, it's unbelievable.
And
Literally
scoring
unbelievable.
13.
Right.
13.
Yeah.
That's honestly
That wasn't where they lost.
incredible.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
the
remember
combination of 30
a
runs.
Yankee Oakland opening day. Remember when opening day 2003? So it was Hideki Matsui's first game in Yankee Stadium. He hits a grand slam, but that game was 17-13, I believe. It was a really high-scoring slugfest. But another great thing, there were a couple of nice things. David Aleva, who was a freshman, does a lot of DHing.
Right.
He got his first career home run in that Manhattan game,
Yep.
and
2 hits,
also
3
3 RBIs. So not bad. But
No,
Aleva
look,
is starting to work his way into getting more playing time. His hitting starting to come around. He couldn't hit anything first couple of months of the season.
Yeah.
Now he's
well,
starting to see
it's,
better.
It's a
the
big
better
jump.
pitching.
It's a big jump from varsity high school baseball to Division I college baseball, and that's why baseball is one of the sports where freshmen usually don't play. And I do want to say this because I'm the beat reporter for the Statesman. I get to speak to Sank after these games, and he had said that was the plan. He was going to have a different pitcher pitch every inning. He wanted everybody who hadn't pitched in a while to get their work in. So it started
was
with
clear.
Kyle Johnson.
And I said that too.
Yeah, and a couple of freshmen went out there, and the good news is when you throw 9 pitchers, it's actually it's easier to figure out who pitched well and who didn't. Right?
That's for sure.
Right.
So, and they did have a couple guys who gave them good outings. Freshman J.C. Kiss and Dawson Logie gave them good outings. Andrew Ledbetter was outstanding in that game, but it earned him an appearance this weekend, but it didn't go nearly as well. Jack Carr was good that weekend. Jack Carr was good that day. So they got a couple of good things there, but obviously it was the hitting. The freshmen were outstanding that day. Every single one of them reached base. Chris Leone, the catcher, had 4 walks. Aleva 2 hits, 3 RBIs, the home run. Maselli had a hit, 2 steals. DiStefano had the first 2 hits of his career. That was really nice to see. They did their part. That was what Matt Sank wanted to see. And being that game really didn't count for anything, I'm sure he's all right. Nobody wants to lose 17-13, but I'm sure he was okay with taking that loss, given that he saw a lot of good things that day. Now let's talk about the important series.
To jump in on that, you have to do that if you're Coach Sank as well too, because remember you're recruiting guys in the future. So you have to see what you're going to have as and there's only one way to find out if you got somebody.
Right.
You have to throw them out there and see if they produce, and then that's going to determine, not next year's recruiting class, the year after that, what you need and what you don't need. So I think it's a quality move on his part to do something like that.
No, it was. And also, it's important to say this about the integrity of their hitters. When you're down by 11, right, when it's 17-6, a lot of guys just, they swing it 3 pitches and they go home because they want to go home,
Yeah,
but
and the only way to move a game forward is to make outs.
Right, they did not waste their at-bats, especially not the freshman, right? Especially not Stanton Luthner, who wound up not starting the game, and then he wound up with 2 hits and 4 RBIs, right? It's important to do that.
Yeah.
So
that's the thing for this, and maybe it's a good thing it's a lost season for baseball, just because the hitting doesn't concern me, especially moving up to the CAA. It's very exciting as to what this team can do offensively.
That's right.
While the names aren't there like they have been in the past, we were talking about softball, right? There's no one name I think that's really going to stand out next year, but with the amount of players I think that all around play well offensively, it's going to be exciting because it means Stony Brook's not going to roll over. They're definitely going to deliver. Offensively, it's the pitching that really concerns me for this year, just because it's a lot of the same mistakes from the start of the season are still there, and just what happens next year when you're facing UMBC now and Maine now, but what happens next year when you're facing Hofstra, more often? You're facing the other teams there, Drexel, Towson,
Elon. Well, look, it's about culture and it is about pitching, right? And Ken, I'm going to refute your point about the names not being there, because I think Evan Giordano is a name. I think Shane Paradine has become a name. I think Evan Fox has become a name. So I wouldn't say they don't have names, but they do have a really, I call it, just because it's good alliteration, I call it the sexy six. But it's, their top 6 hitters are outstanding in whatever order you want to put it in. Evan Fox, Evan Giordano, Matt Brown-Airing, Shane Paradine, Brett Paulson, and Stanton Luthner.
And Brown-Airing struggled early on, but he's worked his way into a spot high up in the lineup.
Exactly. Brown-Airing is one of those guys, Matt. We were just talking about how freshmen don't really play. He had 26 at-bats last year, and this year he comes in, he's starting game 1. Obviously, they liked what they saw from him over the summer. He has, a long-standing pedigree of being a good hitter. And this year, he's raking 295, leads the team in average homers and RBIs and slugging percentage. He's having a huge year. He's going to be All-America. He might be first team All-America East by the end.
There's something him and Paradine do really well. I think it's doubles. They definitely hit hard. Right.
Yeah, they're gap hitters. But, and they hit the ball all over the yard, too. Every single one of these guys, they're not just pull hitters. They do have some dead pull hitters on the team, but not any of the 6 that I just named. And I know we're bleeding into the second hour, but I figure it's okay.
WUSB Stony Brook, by the way, we keep going.
Right. There's a little less. The Knicks not making the playoffs gives us only one basketball team to talk about. So
and
I guess we have a couple extra. We have a couple extra minutes to talk about our baseball team before we transition, But I do want to mention a 7th hitter. I know I mentioned the quote-unquote sexy 6. There's a 7th one emerging, guys. Sophomore catcher from Sachem East, Ryan Michelli.
Yes.
Now, Michelli, big kid. If you've ever been field level with him, you'll want to hit leg day. He's huge. He's built like a catcher. Big kid, strong. When he hits a fly ball out, you're like, oh, that's going to go. He hit one on Wednesday against Manhattan that fell just short of the wall. Yeah. And then he homered over the weekend. He, since March 30th, he's 8 for his last 23, which is a 348 average with a 697 slugging percentage. 2 doubles, 2 homers,
that
6
means
RBI.
that he works his way into the lineup. He'll get pinch hitting gigs. He'll get in the starting lineup on Wednesdays.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, he's going to work his way in.
He's going to be in the lineup moving forward. Sank said after that Binghamton series, because he started him 2 out of the 3 games against Binghamton, and he did stuff then. He was doing stuff leading up to that. He said Ryan's made a strong case for himself. He's definitely made a good impression, and we saw it this weekend. Played all 3 games, on base all 3 times. a double, a homer. Not a double, but a homer. He's improving big time. So I think he's going to be the regular DH moving forward.
What you're starting to see really from the baseball team with their bats is you're starting to see guys who are coming into their own, right? So like Ken, I think the point that you made as far as, they're like no names. It's like they're coming into their own. This is kind of their time to grow and to mature. And in an interesting way, Ken, I think I agree with your point of, in a weird way, it's like a good year for them to not have the pitching, early on, because they're forced to have to come into their own in a way. Because if you don't do it, we're not going to win any games, right? So that has to come, and it has come. So if you're Coach Sank, you got to be excited about that going on right now and for the future.
Exactly, and Greg, to your point, I was writing an article. I don't think I'm going to submit it because I don't have anywhere. I'm in the middle of a dead end with it. But I wrote that this 2022 season for the baseball team is half rebuild, half compete for a championship. And it's a weird situation. I'm sure it's more common in college than it is in pro sports, but you graduate 3 star hitters with Tuchillo. Well, he transferred, but Tuchillo, Hamilton, and LaRocca. You lose 3 outstanding starting pitchers to graduation, and then your ace blows out his elbow, right? So you're down 7 impact players that made you the best team in the conference by a wide margin last year, right? So off the bat, you're going to take a step back. However, you've still got big guys in Giordano, Fox, Paradine, Luthner, Paulson, and a Partridge and a Pear Tree. You get the point, where you're going to still win some games, right? And they are right now in the middle of contending for the top spot. They're 3 games back of Maine, right? They're second seeded in the America East. They're 2 games ahead of Jersey Tech.
Yep, and they also lead Division B.
Right. I don't know how much impact that's going to have this
by
year.
2 games over NJIT.
Right.
And JIT lost 5 in a row, by the way.
Yeah, and Maine has won 9 in a row, and Stony Brook took 2 of 3 from Maine at Maine. So don't discount that. And again, the pitching. It is a good year to not have the pitching because you have to figure out who you're going to have for next year. Colton Book, a lefty freshman, he's ahead of his pack, man. He's pitching really well. ERA down to 401. He's 401 is not particularly good. I want you
on this team is the 3rd best one.
Right. Well, it's metal bats, offensive league. You got to grade on a curve, but
again, small statistical samples. That's why I always go by most recent outings.
And Colton Book, in those last couple of outings, he's been outstanding. He really has been. And then they've got some other guys, Ben Farrow, who maybe he takes his 5th year up. He's been reliable. They're 5-3 when he starts. He had 2 bad starts against Hartford and Maine, but really outside of that, he's been okay. He was mediocre this weekend against UMBC, but he's good, and he pitches to contact, he gets outs, he gives them innings, and they win when he starts.
He lasts long, which is good. Getting 5 plus your last 3 games, is especially for this team. Yeah.
Well, 5 is not much,
but chewing up innings is an absolute must, right?
Yeah.
For a baseball team, you have to have guys that you can throw out there and chew up innings.
Right. Especially when you're going to lose all 4 starting pitchers,
Yeah. Just to make the reference, like you guys brought up Bodrug and said that she had the no-hitter, and then in the next game she didn't pitch as well, but she still won. And I think that's the mark of being a good pitcher. But it's also, it's not an insult for me when I say, it's somebody that can chew up a lot of innings. That's a valuable thing to have on a team.
No, being an innings eater is a good thing. I mean, sometimes it's used as a throwaway comment, but it's generally a good thing. And Farrow's having a good year. He deserves to be labeled as somebody having a good year. Not too many of them are. Brendan Patterman has been outstanding out of the bullpen.
Patterman's having a good year.
But they've got some other guys who Devin Sharkey had a bad game this past weekend, but he's pitching much better of late. He had a good season last year, right? Maybe you think you have something with him for his final year next year. You got a lot of young guys, Ledbetter, Jack Carr, there.
John Kiss, yeah.
Yeah, John Kiss, JC Kiss, yeah. Their freshman class is really exciting of pitchers, but JT Rabb, who I think JT Rabb might wind up being their number one starter by the end of next year, depending on what happens with DeGennaro and stuff. JT Rabb out of high school, he was a monster, but he's recovering from Tommy John. We'll see how that goes, but he's going to be an exciting one to watch. We can't watch him pitch this year, unfortunately, but he's going to be headlining that group. JC Kiss, as you mentioned, and Colton Book, they're really talented. Colton Book is far ahead of the pack, so I think Book will probably be in the rotation next year.
Yeah.
But then Brian Hart, we saw him on Wednesday. He got lit up. He had a terrible day.
He did not pitch that game.
But he's got a live arm. Maybe Sank can hone him in. Maybe he winds up being something, right? Because a lot of freshmen do not have good freshman seasons. Sam Turcotte was awful as a freshman,
You know what? Interesting thing. I just want to bring up Patterman just for a second here. He hasn't started a game yet. And
no, but he leads the conference in ERA, I think.
Yeah. He's got 2.57 ERA. Never gives up more than a run per outing.
No.
But it's interesting how he's being developed here. He's clearly being developed as the anchor of the bullpen. They're not even going to try to roll him out there as a starter. No. He backs up Ben Farrow. That's the combo, Farrow and Patterman.
Battery, yeah.
Right, yeah, and they're obviously looking for someone else to turn it around. Kyle Johnson was outstanding last year. He's had a bad year this year, So next year he'll be back. I know that for a fact. He's in a 5-year program. Maybe he these next couple of weeks, being that they're eliminated from the postseason, these next couple of weeks are going to be really big for the pitchers, the relief pitchers, the starting pitchers, all of them, to turn it around, to salvage their season and give Sank something positive to look forward to next year in their first year in the CAA.
Right. Not even just Sank, but I think just the fans and I think just, folks in general, because, we're reviewing these games and it's like there's a lot of close games. And part of the reason is because, the offense could show up, but, pitching-wise, it's where they struggle. And, the 17-13 game, you could pass that aside, obviously. Right, but there's 2 games here. Stony Brook won 6-5. And it was because Stony Brook had a lead, then didn't, and the offense had to climb back up to get it.
Right. Well, that's baseball, baby, right? It's not an easy sport.
Mike, I think you brought up a really good point. The pitchers have to do something at if you're going to say this is like the last third of the season for them. And I think it's a good point. And I think you're right for Coach Sank and Ken for the fans as well, too, here. Are you young and good, or are you young and bad?
Yeah.
And, because you can't just be, listen, you can be young. And guys are going to struggle when they're young, and that happens in all sports.
Yeah.
But are you young and bad? Because that means young and bad means you're not going to be good next year.
Exactly. Exactly. And, keep in mind, too, this whole – I hate to keep pointing fingers at COVID because that's a lame cop-out. But a lot of these guys who are in sophomore or junior year even, that's not an accurate description, right? Because COVID took away a year from them. So some of these guys who were sophomores last year and didn't get to pitch much because they had a star-studded rotation, now they're juniors, but really they're freshmen, because they didn't get to pitch in 2020. So we're seeing some of that. Like Josh O'Neill. Josh O'Neill is a junior. On paper, Josh O'Neill is a junior. Also on paper, he's not having a good year. 5.49 ERA, 1.65 WHIP. But Josh O'Neill of late, he had a terrible outing against Binghamton, but of late overall, not including that Binghamton outing, Josh O'Neill has been outstanding. And again, today, Josh O'Neill was really good. If his defense doesn't hurt him, his line is even better. Josh O'Neill is a guy who I think going into next year, he's shown you something. He has to continue to show you stuff. We need to see more of what Josh O'Neill has done over the last month from Kyle Johnson and JC Kiss and Colton Book and Brandon Lashley. These guys going over the final 4 weeks of the year, we're going to have to see more of that Josh O'Neill type development from everyone else just to take this positive momentum into next year. Answer some questions before we enter the CAA.
Well, yeah, and I want to jump in. I find it interesting because you're talking about some of the guys that are jumping. I think the group that's probably going to has the toughest road are the sophomores because they didn't get a chance to be seniors in high school.
Right.
And I think there's a real big dynamic in being the leader of your high school team and how you perform in that role, because I think that the kind of defines you. And I think when you lose that opportunity to do that, you struggle a little bit. And I have to say, you brought up Michele before, and then I think Evan.
It's Matt Brown airing.
Yeah, but they're having a nice season. So I give them a lot of credit for doing so by not having that senior high school season. I mean, I know these guys play all year round. I get that. But I think there's something about being on showcase your senior year in high school.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. But hold on, what year is Andrew Ledbetter? Is he a sophomore too? He's a sophomore, right? And Andrew Ledbetter is a relief pitcher. Jack Carr, ditto. He's a sophomore. Really, these guys are freshmen because they didn't pitch much last year just because of the stacked pitching group. So this is important experience we're getting, and I get it. It's a little bit late in their careers to be calling them freshmen, but they are essentially freshmen, right? And so this is. It's almost an entire pitching staff of freshmen, right? Whether you're freshmen in name only or you're freshmen technically. So they're getting these guys innings, they're getting them experience. Some are doing good things, some not so. But as long as they get these guys experience, I think that's going to be, really key to the future of this program.
A little by the way, and while you guys were talking, I was taking a look at the CAA website, taking a look at the CAA baseball teams, and then where they fit in the standings. Just got to warn you, a lot of these places have top-notch baseball facilities. Now, I'm not saying Joe Nathan Field is a great field, but it doesn't have much else around it. So maybe we'll get the impetus to build around the field. More permanent stands, a press box, something really nice like everybody else in the CAA has.
Well, you talk about everybody else in the CAA. Have you been to Farmingdale?
Farmingdale's facility is great. We played the America East Championships back in 2008 there because they had lights. The America East said, if you want to host, you got to have lights, and they had lights. So we played there.
I saw it over the weekend, and I was like, oh my! And their softball facility is gorgeous as well.
Yeah,
too. I was blown away by how nice it was. And you're right; it's not just the field. Joe Nathan Field is fine. It's everything around it.
There isn't anything around it. That's the big problem.
That's got to change for sure. That has to change.
Yeah, I mean, you're playing. You know what? The other thing too, the top team right now in the CAA is College of Charleston. College of Charleston is one of those schools that all the teams from the north go down south and get beat up by. Just a friendly warning.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that as long as these pitchers continue to develop, they'll be okay, regardless of, how inferior their baseball complex is. If Ledbetter throws strikes, right? Look, opponents are only hitting 203 against Ledbetter. His bugaboo is the walks. If Ledbetter throws strikes, if Devin Sharkey throws strikes, if Kyle Johnson can return to form, if Jack Carr throws strikes, these guys the baseball team will win. Just that simple.
Agreed.
But of course, not far from College of Charleston is Coastal Carolina, and we know what Coastal Carolina did to Stony Brook back in 2010, but most importantly, they've upgraded their. They won the national championship in 2016, so that tells you everything you need to know right there. But this is an upgrade, okay? I've been complaining loud and long about the basketball being a one big conference, and it deserves better. There's no doubt about it. But on the other hand, look who got slighted in recent NCAA tournament selections. Look at what happened to the A-10. Okay, and look what happened to the Big Ten. They sent 9 teams from the Big Ten. It's ridiculous. So, I mean, that's another problem. That's another problem we don't have control over. But this is going to be a step up in every sport. The nice thing about the CAA is that it's not just about basketball, not just about football. It's across the board. And you have to be a pretty well-balanced athletic program overall to be competitive in it. So that's definitely going to help Stony Brook. But it's also going to demand a lot more money and effort from administrators. Their fundraising has to be stepped up. There's going to be a lot that has to be stepped up here in order to, I mean, forget about Hofstra. Hofstra, of course, is your most immediate competitor because it's right down the road from you. But a College of Charleston type of school, okay. Now you're up in, especially in the lower exposure sports, you're up with the big boys.
Agreed, and we've seen the upgrades, especially for football and Laval Stadium. So it's definitely been done in the past. So definitely be key now with Stony Brook transition to see that follow through for the rest of the programs as well, especially with how good the on-field products have been over the past few seasons.
Well, the other thing too is that all these schools could theoretically, although they're good, but they're not that good in terms of getting top seeds in a regional. They could host a regional. They're capable of it. And Coastal Carolina did host a regional. They hosted back in 2010. So, again, these are things that, they have to be in the plans. You have to upgrade the baseball and softball facilities in order to be on a par, especially if those CAA schools are recruiting against you. I mean, Matt Sank knows. He's been down there. Okay, he's been up and down the Eastern Seaboard. He's seen what the CAA schools have. I'm sure he's been whispering in ears all over the place. If we're going to be taken seriously in the CAA, we have to upgrade.
Yeah, it's no doubt about it. I was wondering I was just thinking about it, that how does the indoor facility get done before the baseball and softball fields get redone?
Theoretically, it attracts more money in fundraising. You can sell more tickets. I mean, look, Stony Brook owes the world to Matt Sank and the baseball program because that team, 2012, it exposed the Stony Brook to the world. I even told Shirley Strum-Kenny this soon after it happened. When Stony Brook went to the NCAA in 2008 to face Arizona State had in its game notes, "Where is Stony Brook?" By 2012, everybody knew where Stony Brook was. I mean, it used to be a common complaint. I've said this before, where people would say, "Stony Brook University, where is Stony Brook?" in terms of anywhere on the planet, not knowing it's a big SUNY school. People, especially coaches, would say that, why did we go away from SUNY Stony Brook to Stony Brook University? Nobody knows where Stony Brook is. Binghamton's better off. People have a rough idea of where Binghamton is. Samuel Adams came out with a beer called Stony Brook Red, and it was about a place in Massachusetts. And I'm like, Stony Brook Red never made it down to Long Island? Are you kidding me?
Woe is us.
Yeah, but that's the way it was. It's not the case anymore, and that's due more than any other program to the baseball team. During that run, because what I had to do is I couldn't travel with the team, because what would happen is that they go down to Miami, play there, go straight to Baton Rouge. I had to go back to New York. Work a few days in the NHL office. The Stanley Cup Finals going on. So I got a chance to go to some Yankee and Met games. So I was able to talk to some people. And the college games were going on monitors in the clubhouses. And of course, Joe Nathan has been promoting the Stony Brook program. Everybody's talking to him. Okay. And then when the Seawolves advanced from Baton Rouge to Omaha, I got quoted in USA Today. And nobody knew about it. It was Joe Nathan's wife who called Matt Sank and said, "Hey, Mankiewicz got quoted in USA Today." And Sank told me.
I think we should end it. We should transition into the professional talk with this one last quote from Matt Sank that Matt Mankiewicz himself dropped on us last week. But aside from present company who is the best coach on this campus?
That was the question he
Yeah.
asked me. There's several years ago, but still.
Yeah, he once told me this past it was when they swept UMass Lowell. It was right after, actually. It wasn't when they swept. It was when Giordano and Durkin hit the back-to-back home runs to win game 2.
Yes.
I was interviewing them together, okay, and then I finished. And I guess to Matt Sank, I finished rather quickly for the, considering the fact that they were the two heroes. So he was like, "You need me today, Mike?" And I was like, "Sure, I guess I might as well speak to the guy who runs this ship." And he said, "Well, I only run it when we win. When we lose, it's Coach Martin's team."
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Anybody else have a Matt Sank story they want to get out before we talk
But
about?
well, you know what? That's why he's the best coach on campus.
Oh yeah.
Now, Ken,
we have some quality coaches. I'm not taking anything away from the achievements of our other coaches, but
but
nobody got to the national championship level in any other sport, and that includes men's and women's lacrosse, because Joe Spallina has not yet gotten to a Final Four, and we knocked on the door of the Final Four with the men back in 2010, and we didn't get there either. So far, Matt Sank is at the top, but that can change.
It could. I'm not too convinced it will, but it's a long-standing look. 32 years is a long time to be number one. I don't see it changing anymore. Plus, Megan Bryant's up there too. She's pretty good. She's not too bad herself. But
oh yeah.
Anyway, speaking of a Stony Brook Seawolf baseball player, did you guys see that Travis Jankowski had a hit and a bases loaded walk today? That's a Seawolves RBI in the pros, baby.
Well,